Hello and welcome to the Hurling Show. Back again this Monday, and just another jam-packed weekend of GAA action. We're focusing obviously mostly on hurling, but there's a few incredible bits of football action over the weekend as well. Delighted to be joined by Fintan O'Toole of the 42.ie. Fintan, have you drawn your breath after the weekend?
A lot to take in, wasn't there? It definitely feels like the last two weekends, it's really kind of spiked out of nowhere in terms of the number of county finals. I suppose we're used to kind of having this maybe early October, is usually the traditional time, but it feels like the first 2 weekends in November, there's been a lot to kind of absorb. It probably settles down a little bit, I think, from next weekend on. We're kind of moving into provincial club scenes and like Mayo and Dublin, I think, are the big football finals. But definitely there's a lot to take in over the last couple of weekends, all right, yeah.
Serious bits of drama, and we'll unpack it throughout the show. Obviously, the Hurling Show brought to you again by orgaretro.com. There's, as you can see in the image on the screen there's a host of jerseys available. All these classic retro jerseys between Tipperary, Galway, Wexford, everywhere. There's no county left out. And if you want to get 15% off, go to orgaretro.com and type in the promo code OurGame. It's an ideal stocking filler. That's one stocking filler. Fintan O'Toole's book on the Milers is another stocking filler. And even Fintan, since I was chatting to you last week, you're now an award-winning journalist. Yet another award coming your way.
Yeah, it seems so that they've decided to judge it. Yeah, it was great to win the J. McNamee Award. It was a pretty niche subject on Kerry hurling, but kind of given the family links, it was kind of a nice kind of piece to kind of get recognised for that. So yeah, it was a nice thing to hear on Friday. I was on the train down from the Ireland Portugal game, having been out on Thursday night. So when the message came through, so yeah, nice thing to get, all right.
Definitely, I definitely encourage anyone to read that. It's on the 42. If you type in Fintan O'Toole and Kerry, it should come up anyway. Mark Corkin just says Bernie has to fill his water bottle. That'll be another 10 minutes. So no, I have the water bottle here beside me. Actually, unfortunately, it's Tipperary pure spring water. I kind of feel like I've betrayed myself here. Patrick Hickey says push back to 1:15. Crowded rush, big crowd expected today. There's always a big crowd expected. There's so much to unpack. Best place to start, Fintan, is probably with the Tipperary final yesterday. Yet again, I think you were down at last year's final as I was. Unbelievably dramatic as Kildangan won in extra time by a point with a last minute goal from Brian Mallochny. This was equally as dramatic yesterday. Finished up third of Sarsfield's 217, Loughmore-Castleiney 23 points. Loughmore having fallen so far behind early on, 8 points down, 2 goals within the space of 90 seconds from Dennis Matter. Unbelievable character and resolve to come back. And I know they felt very, very aggrieved at full time that they thought they had a sideline puck to win it, and the referee blew it up. What were your thoughts at the end of that game? Again, another kind of a heart-stopping game in Tip.
Well, I suppose first of all, like that injury time incident, just watching it, I mean, 2 minutes have been indicated, and it was the 63rd minute when that happened. I mean, maybe when the puck out had happened, maybe that was the time to blow it. It did seem a bit of a strange kind of situation to blow up, but I think in fairness, there had to be the amount of time played. From Loughmore's point of view, I suppose you're playing in a match, you're not looking at the clock or anything like that. You have a chance for a sideline. You have someone like Noel McGrath in your team. And as well, look, I think there's a bit of backstory here. I think like Loughmore do feel a bit aggrieved, and they had said it about last year, the way it happened in terms of the injury time played at the end of extra time, and that the whistle that they didn't really adjust for a small little bit. Remember after Barry Hogan's puck out went all the way down, so
I
maybe
think it
that
was
was a
seven
small.
seconds between the ball going over the bar and the ball being pucked out. So yeah, they
Yeah,
definitely they definitely felt aggrieved by that.
and that I think when Hogan had pucked the ball, it was kind of mid-flight, or when the referee kind of blew his whistle. So maybe that would kind of fed into it a small little bit. Like, but I think in fairness, I was kind of watching TG Carr, like when you see the interview afterwards from John McGrath, when he's coming off the pitch, he's kind of shaking his head and he looks very frustrated, but he was fairly magnanimous towards the ref, and like a lot of people were saying that it was a really, really good performance by Conor Doyle. And I think I don't think there was any kind of anger or huge frustration in John McGrath's kind of reaction when he was kind of interviewed on TG Carr afterwards. But as the game itself, thought it was absolutely brilliant. Really, really entertaining. Probably more credit maybe due to the players, because we were both down at that game last year, and that was just the most unbelievable weather conditions for hurling in the end of September. I mean, we're 2 months further on now. Obviously, everything that goes into that with kind of a softer, heavier pitch, a lot of kind of miles in the legs for both teams, particularly Loughmore with hurling football. But I thought they both served up a really, really good game. Just the interesting thing for me was the fact that they managed to drag it back without getting a goal. You think when you concede 2 goals so early, especially on a November day, you're going to need something to kind of get yourself back into it. But I just thought it was really, really impressive the way they just kind of up the work rate. obviously John McGrath kind of stood out. I mean, like his scoring stats of the last couple of rounds have been just absolutely off the charts in terms of what he's doing. And one thing I noticed about him is just how good his long range free taking is. Like it's almost kind of a gimme. Like he gets huge distance on his strikes, like in terms of kind of how he's clearing the bar. And then I thought the other two guys that stood out for me, like Kieran Conley, so was a guy a couple of years ago with the Tip on the 21s. He does look like maybe he's the next guy that's going to jump up. And then I remember interviewing his dad last year, Liam McGrath's dad, Tom, when Loughmore were going for the double, and he talked about Liam obviously being in Australia, but he's obviously been some addition for them last year. I mean, like he probably had a split second to kind of steady himself when Liam Tracy passed it out to him, but like he absolutely had to nail it because one more second delay and Thurles defender was going to be on him, and I thought it was an absolutely brilliant kind of piece of composure, and I think he was 3 points of play overall. So he's been a huge addition, but yeah, huge entertainment. To go again in 2 weeks was interesting. The contrast, no extra time there, whereas there was extra time in the Dublin final. On Saturday night, maybe that's kind of lent into the fact that Tip of a boy through to the provincial hurling semi-final, and just one upshot of it now, which I think is going to be quite interesting. You're basically going to have Ballygunner playing Ballyea in a Munster quarter final on November 28th. The Tip final replay will be on the same day, and then the winners of those two games will play each other the following week. So that's probably an interesting kind of dynamic when we're kind of looking ahead, as we're probably starting to do now into the Munster club scene.
Yeah, and that replay will be, I think, Loughmore-Castleiney's 17th weekend in a row. They're playing Clonmel next weekend. That'll be number 16. There's a potential for them to be in a Munster senior football and senior hurling, a quagmire of fixtures over the winter. But it said, like, it's a hard situation, but it's the dream situation for any dual club. Tullamore in a similar situation in the football and hurling. Like these are the problems that you love to have. You can only have them when you're in these kind of privileged positions.
Yeah, like I suppose like there's a good few clubs at the moment kind of going for doubles when you see, Naas and Clare obviously have done it, and Kilmacud and Dublin going up, but like they're largely, from what I understand, kind of separate squads. Like the Loughmore thing, the one, like obviously they've been doing it a good couple of years, but the one that kind of reminds me a bit of is Cratloe and Clare. You remember 2014 were kind of going for both. Both one vote counties didn't manage to add a Munster title, but I think Loughmore, the impression I get is that they're kind of sick of the questions, the management and all that, about how do you keep going and all that. They obviously just find a way to do it. Mick Dempsey's expertise coming in is obviously interesting this year, but I think it's Myrtle Brennan is the name of the kind of fitness trainer. There's obviously a huge amount of credit due to them in terms of how they're kind of keeping guys fresh and they're managing to go to the well, because like I said, to be 8 points down yesterday and to reel it back without the kind of impetus of a goal, I thought that was the kind of the most impressive thing. And the way just different players stood up, the way, John McGrath comes out to the half forward line. I think was it 4 points in play. I think 8 frees was the kind of breakdown of his 12 tally. That's serious scoring. And they also managed to basically, I suppose, I thought as the game progressed, kind of get a handle on, keeping the ball away from the Mahers. Because I mean, I saw it in the semi-final when Kilkenny played Thurles Stars, and we've seen it so many times over the years that basically you just have to keep it away from the two of them in terms of your kind of deliveries, because they will absolutely mop it up. And not only that, but the way Ronan Maher then will come out of defence with the ball, or Paddy Maher will come out kind of further deep, it's either a score or it's possibly an assist for a point further up. So that was the one thing that they did really adapt to very well as the second half progressed.
Just a word on John McGrath. Fintan definitely didn't have one of his better years with Tipperary. And he's just looked like a different player coming back onto the club scene. And you'd hope, Tipperary fans would obviously hope that he can bring that back into the county next year. But he's just, he looks so fresh. He looks so hungry. He looks so sharp in comparison to maybe when we saw him in blue and gold earlier on the year.
Definitely. Look, I suppose it's not really comparing like with like, and I suppose there always is that caveat, you have to stay. But in terms of like just kind of really producing it for his team when it really matters, he's been exceptional over the last couple of weeks. I mean, just the stats, like it was 4-6 I think against Kilruan McDonough's.
Yeah.
And then what I've noticed since, I mean, if you look at that game, they kind of made the headway early on, and he gets the goals, and it's a good start for them, and they're kind of flying from an early stage, and they basically have most of the work kind of done by half time in order to win that game. But they have to come back against Borsallee. He's the guy that stands up with 112. Okay, the goal was a penalty, but he nails his long range frees. Yesterday again, they have to come back, and he gets 12 points, and hits some really, really big frees when they really need it during the second half. And even like if to just switch goals, the previous week it was his goal at the very end of the semi-final against Moyle Rovers. So like I suppose you're looking at this time of year, you're basically looking for your county player to come out step up and maybe kind of save your club when they kind of really, really need it. Like, and it's the leadership, I think, that has stood out for me in terms of the scores that he's produced in both goals over the last couple of weeks, and he's absolutely in red hot form. And I mean, it's not as if, this threat isn't advertised. I mean, I presume most of the Thurles Sarsfield's kind of talk is that not only about him from play, but if you concede a free kind of further out the field, it's almost kind of a gimme for him. But yeah, no, he's just been absolutely exceptional over the last couple of weeks, and I suppose Loughmore just kind of hoping that it's kind of more the same now over the next 2 weeks as they get set for another 2 finals.
Just a word on Brian McGrath, obviously playing with an injured thumb as well. One of many players, Aidan McCarthy, Dave Fitzgerald both played for Inagh-Kilnamona at the weekend, carrying injuries as well. Just kind of shows how much it means. Regardless, unless your leg is falling off, these lads will do everything they possibly can to play these big games. A word on Davy Corbett as well. He man-marked Noel McGrath. And, just wondering, should Loughmore play him as an inside forward for the whole of the replay in order to maybe put Davy Corbett out of its comfort zone? I think that's another kind of question. You have to look at, if a team is going to do X to stop our best player, what are we going to do to make, that player really, really uncomfortable? And that might be something they might look at.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, I suppose, the 2 weeks now, the gap, it does give teams a chance in between, draw final replay. Maybe you mightn't change too much if it was just a week, but, you get a chance to kind of properly look at it and see, can you kind of make tweaks? From the Thurles point of view, I suppose much of the focus goes a lot more, obviously, because of the kind of dual element and their kind of resilience and all that. But I mean, in fairness, I thought Dennis Maher early on with the goals and Pat Burke with his point taking were absolutely exceptional. And for me, I think one of the game-changing moments was when Loughmore basically dug themselves out of a hole that they had made for themselves with that short puck out that went wrong, and Dennis Maher had the chance for the third goal, but Joey Hennessy managed to get that back for a block. You kind of felt if a third goal had gone in at that stage, it might have been maybe a bridge too far for Loughmore. But definitely, Thurles, probably going to be disappointed in terms of being 8 points up, but didn't manage to kind of, I suppose, to be only going in 3 points behind at half time, that definitely probably made it definitely far more manageable deficit for Loughmore to kind of attack. And from Thurles' point of view, probably not being able to kind of to build on that as the second half progressed. But I thought, just a word on Pat Burke, I thought some of his points were absolutely superb.
He's sweet, isn't he? He's so technically gifted, isn't he? I'm sure he's put in hours and hours and hours growing up, but he's a joy to watch. You could watch him stroking the ball over into the net all day, every day. Absolutely.
Well, I suppose he kind of lives in Separate Stadium, doesn't he? You'd often see him at big GA Championship matches. He's kind of one of the grounds people kind of cutting the grass before and after the game. But it was just one note I took. I thought the exchange of points early in the second half, Lee McGrath scored one at one end, and then straight away Burke scored one at the other end. It was like a standing position under huge pressure. You just don't have any time to think, and just the technique to be able to kind of split the post. I thought it was kind of marksmanship of the highest quality. And it was interesting. Again, you talk about, I suppose, teams looking at the danger and whatever. Paddy Creedon was the star for me in the semi-final. He had really caught the eye. He had a big physical advantage on Killadang, and he maximised that, got 5 points in play. I just noticed watching it yesterday, it seemed anytime he got the ball, Loughmore were very alive to that threat. There wasn't one player, there was a second player kind of covering, and maybe that opened up the space for someone like Burke and maybe Dennis Maher to kind of cut loose early on. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what way that dynamic works amongst that forward for the replay. But it ebbed and flowed throughout. Just really, really, really exciting stuff,
Just a comment in there from ML89. Could you really say Kilmacud going for a double when it's two different panels? I think the fullback Bill Sheehy is it Bill Sheehy? I think he's part of Ronan Sheehy. He's part of both.
I think he's the only one. And I suppose that what that text was saying, it was similar. I think Nace have only about 3 or 4 maybe. I'm not sure the amount of Tullamore, but Loughmore's pretty much the bulk of the squad. The other one, it's kind of at lower grades, but Kanturk and Corks, they're in the senior A hurling and Premier Intermediate football. They pretty much have much the same squad, all the kind of Walshes and McLaughlins, maybe players that'll be recognisable to people on a wider sense. So I think for those, when you have the bulk of the squad offered them both, it's fair achievement to kind of still be going strong, especially when we're kind of into mid-November now.
No, it's savage. And even Loughmore's durability, physically and mentally, to be able to stay going and not don't seem to pick up any muscle injuries week on week, which is phenomenal too. Just a quick one on Sarge Fintan before we move on. Rona Matter, I'd say, was probably made a bit of a hero out of, particularly early in the game yesterday, got an awful lot of ball. How reliant are Sarge on probably him and Paddy and even that full forward line as well? And if Loughmore can, I suppose, negate the damage, particularly try and keep Ronan out of the game the next day in particular, I'd say they probably have half of the job done, because they do, Dennis Maher 2-1 yesterday, Pa Burke 5 from play, Ronan and Paddy very, very strong at the back. Like, if they can negate them a small bit, they'd have a massive chance, you'd imagine, of winning the replay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely the big stars, but I suppose I would say, like, I mentioned Creedon early on. Stakeland was kind of a guy that I've kind of noticed, just the kind of newer, younger players that have come for stars since they completed the 4 in a row in 17. Like, maybe this experience will stand to them in terms of this was for some of them, it was their first county senior final. Whereas obviously Loughmore had the experience of last year, and they've obviously been in football finals regularly. It could maybe stand to them, and maybe one of them is kind of going to kind of cut loose. But it just definitely was evident. I know it's kind of cliched, but it was just that kind of drive and appetite for work. Loughmore definitely just seemed to get a grip in it around the middle third, didn't they? In the kind of just before maybe the second quarter after the water break, and then kind of as the second half progressed. But then at the same time, like Thurles, when Rory Maher split that free when they came again, and was it Aidan McCormick got a point, and Conor Stakelum, I think, was the other one. Fairness to Thurles, they're kind of out of the game for long stages, it seems, on the scoreboard, but then they managed to put themselves in a winning position and were only caught at the very end, So kind of a lot of positives for both sides to kind of take from it. But like definitely it was interesting the way the game, I suppose we distill it down a lot when we're looking at it, don't we, to kind of McGrath's v Mahers, and it was kind of the Mahers on top of the very start, and then Loughmore managed to just kind of steer the game away from them, and they got the McGraths kind of into it. But just come back to what I was saying, like earlier, Kieran Connolly was one that really stood out for me in terms of kind of his effectiveness and just kind of how busy he was in the middle of the field. And I suppose if you're looking at a guy, as I think most of us do at this stage of the year, don't we? When we look at county finals, we take one eye to the following summer, and you obviously see every county manager is at the county final, and you wonder who they're going to look at. And obviously, it doesn't always work like that they make an immediate impact. But I suppose he has a bit of underage pedigree, so we'll be interested to see maybe if he's in Colin Bonner's plans at some stage.
It's going to be an intriguing replay. Just a comment in there from Noel Walsh. He said, as a neutral looking on, he said it was one of the greatest games he's seen. He's from Mine Temple too. I think won the Tipp Junior at the weekend. I think Tossie Hamill was playing centre back, and I think Conor Bowe, the Tipp footballer, who obviously has serious hurling pedigree, he could yet end up in the Tipp panel yet. That was
the Tipp intermediate, and like they had Garrett O'Connor as well, who would have been a Tipp under 20 last year. Just apparently it was a really, really good game. Like you would have Bill Maher and Paul Maher would have played for Kilsheelan and Mark Keogh, so a lot of kind of guys that county standard. And I suppose the interesting thing is, like, this is the third grade in Tipperary, but they go forward to the Munster Immediate now and they're actually playing Kilmiley, the Kerry senior champions. It's how it works. But whereas this will be the last year, you might have touched on it in terms of the changes that were made in Tipperary last week, where that they're going to be bringing in a Premier Intermediate grade, and they'll be going forward to the Munster Championship now on. So that, and we probably should mention still the Seamus Marine final, Temple yesterday. That was a massive win for them in terms of trying for a good few years. And again, there's a lot of kind of recognisable guys. I don't know, some of them, would they be in your time in UL Fitz, kind of the Stapletons, and
Tom would have played with Tom. Tom was captain when we were beaten in the final, I think, by your crew in UCC actually, yeah. But they did a great win over Kilnall. It was 125 to 115, so they head up to Dan Breen next year. I think Gerard Ryan, who'd all remember from 2010 with Tipperary, ended up with I think 4 from play. Just an interesting one on Mine Temple too as well. I think Brian Carroll is coaching them, and I think he's playing in the county final with Coolderry, senior final in Offaly next weekend. So there's an awful lot of lads juggling an awful lot of balls in different places. Just on the Clare final, I was down in Cusack Park. It ended up Ballyea 117, Inagh-Kilnamona 116. There's several talking points here. One being that the game was delayed by 15 minutes. The throw-in was delayed. Now, I walked in handily enough, but I went in a side gate, but there were massive streams of people waiting outside. And you would have to wonder how, on the biggest day of the year, like, that Clare officials didn't realise that there was going to be a big crowd at this game. Of course there was going to be a big crowd at this game. You have Inagh-Kilnamona going for their third county, or their first county title, and you have Ballyea going for their third. They're going to bring everybody within those parishes, and given Ballyea's ability to have several different football clubs involved as well, you're going to bring massive pockets to that. So they really should have known that there was going to be bigger crowds. And it's the first time in a while I've seen a county final put back by 15 minutes for traffic congestion. But once the game threw in, it was just really intriguing game. Ballyea without Tony Kelly to win a county final is just phenomenal. I said it before, that what I would have equated it to would be the time Ballyhale were missing Henry Shefflin and Cha Fitzpatrick, and they ended up getting to a Leinster semi-final, I think, one year. Like, it's phenomenal to think that they could do that without him, like one of the best hurlers in the country, and by a mile their best hurler.
But even getting to the final alone, because it's not like he was just ruled out for the final. I think was it the quarter final he came on as a sub against Kilkenny, and we did get a couple of points, but they win a battle against Newmarket-on-Fergus by a point in the semi-final. They win a battle yesterday by a point in the final. But I watched the live stream of the semi-final. You'd probably be able to maybe comment on this from yesterday. It did look to me kind of when you see him, he seems to be quite involved still. He's kind of talking to the selectors. He was in a boot for the semi-final. So I think you had it like Jack Brown was kind of talking about the game in terms of kind of his input and his intelligence and all that, So he may have been absent on the field of play, but it doesn't seem like he was kind of absent from kind of directing operations and maybe kind of giving a couple of words of advice to Robbie Hogan and that in terms of their kind of strategy. Was that obvious on the day?
Yeah,
Like,
no, it was,
yeah,
in fairness. And he was actually hitting frees before the match. He had his boots on. There
okay,
was no protective boot or anything like that. He was kind of jogging around doing his own thing in the warm-up. He was listed at number 34. Now, I didn't see whether he had a jersey on, but I would assume that he could have had one on. He was practicing a few frees beforehand. And during the game, he wasn't really down near the management in the first half, but once things started moving in the second half, he was down there the whole time. Very, very vocal. And like just a couple of things Jack Brown said about him. We know Tony Kelly is one of the best hurlers in the country, but he also just said not only is Tony one of the best athletes, but he has one of the greatest hurling brains in the country, and he sees small things when he gets a chance to stand back. He sees things that are being missed. It's little small bits of information that make a big difference on the day. I wouldn't say we won it without him. He was there all the time. He's still a massive role in the place, but obviously you'd love to have him on the field. And Robbie Hogan kind of echoed that. Robbie Hogan, who was manager when they got to the All-Ireland Clubs final against Coola in 2017, stepped out for a couple of years and then came back, and in his first year has won another one. He just said Tony was outside hitting frees before the game. Even between the lines, he's working outside the lines, which I tell is a really good line, because it's just he's obviously always thinking outside the box. He just said he's a great lad, he's a great attitude, and he's a huge part of our setup. We wouldn't have been here without him in the earlier games. He's on the way back, and he's a huge part of our setup. So he came on and got 2 points against Kilmaley as they won by a point. He was obviously on the sideline as they beat Newmarket-on-Fergus by a point. And now to beat Inagh-Kilnamona by a point as well. It's like their ability to get over the line in really, really tight games. It's amazing when you have that muscle memory of winning county finals. This is their third county final. They've only ever contested 3, and they've won all 3. It's phenomenal. And while a lot of the focus will be on Tony Kelly's absence, Jack Brown just stood up something shocking in the second half. He's captain, obviously, and you'd expect him to be leading, but he was just even saying after that when they realised that Tony was out, they all just kind of have to stick the chest out and find a little bit more. And he also said it would be worse losing him mid-game and trying to adapt mid-game, because he wouldn't be able to deal with the shock almost. Whereas at least they know beforehand that he's missing and can plan without him. Like players like Gary Brennan really stood up. Got this mad unorthodox point in the second half. It was kind of like over his shoulder like that from just outside the 21. Got a savage score where he sold nearly the length of the field in the first half as well. Now, Ballyea nearly shot themselves in the foot. They had 8 wides in each half. And in the third quarter, it looked like they had done enough damage to nearly cost themselves the match. So I think they had 5 or 6 wides, whereas Inagh-Kilnamona hardly, like nearly every time they shot, it went over the bar. Just a quick one here. Like Ed McCarthy played injured. I think he has tendonitis in his hamstring. He was heavily strapped and very, very limited to what he could do. But what he did was outstanding for what he was at. He wasn't really able to run. He was jogging around the pitch. He got a goal inside 90 seconds after a great catch and finish. He caught over Paul Flanagan, hit it to the net. Was quiet probably for a few minutes. Then he hit 4 in a row to finish out the half. 2 from play, 2 from place balls as well. And he was good even in the third quarter as well, but he was quiet probably in the last quarter when they really needed him most. It's probably just fatigue, really. And I think the same happened with Kilmurray-Abricken in the football final the week before, where just injury and fatigue probably just caught to him,
That's so tough for him. Like, you played through the pain barrier twice in a row, 2 times in a row. And, like, obviously, very narrow defeats in both of them, like,
like, obviously, the killer.
We're talking about it's great when you're going for the double and you win both and all that, and you're contesting finals and all that, like, but that's quite a sickener for him to come out the wrong side of both, like,
Big time. And just on Ballyea, like Inagh-Kilnamona probably shot themselves in the foot in the first quarter alone. Like Niall Deasy scored 5 place balls. He ended up with 1-9, all from place balls, and it was his penalty in the 51st minute that brought them back level at 112 apiece. And then Inagh-Kilnamona responded with a 65 from Ed McCarthy and a lovely effort off the hurl from Niall Mullins, and they were 2 up. But then Ballyea hit 4 out of the last 5, 2 frees from Deasy. Cathal O'Connor hit 2 points, or his second point, and I believe he's only transferred in this year. So he wasn't playing with Ballyea up until this year. And he's one of many. Like, if you go down through the Ballyea team, you're looking at, Gary Brennan, a former Clare footballer, Pierce Lillis, a current Clare footballer, Cathal O'Connor, a current Clare footballer, Killian Brennan as well. Martin O'Leary come on and got a point. He's from Kilmail, I think. He's, a former Clare footballer, panellist as well. Did Aaron Griffin, corner forward, who's, been a lively sub coming in for them as well. So there's Clare footballers everywhere there, and they used every bit of their athleticism.
Yeah, it is interesting, I suppose, the geography of it. Like, I mean, like the Brennans, I think, are a different case in that Ballyea and Clondegad are pretty much, I think, sister clubs. Like, Clondegad got to a football final a couple of years ago, and like Kelly was playing, and I think Paul Flanagan and that. And the Brennans are from there, but it is interesting, I suppose, to call O'Connor. Anyone kind of west of Ballyea is along that road going towards Kilkee. That's all kind of football. But like, just a couple of things, like you mentioned one, like Jack Brown, also Paul Flanagan. I mean, I know Kelly is the kind of star of the show, but like, what a defensive backbone for your club team to have, with the two of them kind of a full back and centre back, just seem both kind of really, really solid in terms of kind of everything they do. Like, and just the other thing I just thought is to have won a third county, because I remember Kelly was actually up on a media interview day before the All-Ireland Club final, the one where they played Coola, and look, he might be proved right in this, but he basically said, look, this will never happen to us again. Like, he said, this whole thing of being here, being interviewed with Ballyea, he goes, like, who knows if it's ever going to happen to us again to win a county. Like, he seemed to basically be thinking this was an unbelievable journey they were on that year, and that could be the end of it, kind of a thing, But to have won, to come back and win in 2018, and very lucky that year. Do you remember, like, Ballygunner absolutely just caught them in the very, very last minute, a Philip Manny goal, and obviously they're playing them again now in a couple of weeks, and at least they'll have, relative home advantage in terms of the game being on in their county. But like, to win a third, I suppose it really does solidify their kind of greatness, doesn't it, in terms of in Clare, I think, in terms of managing to win a third county. I mean, we talked about, to me, the third is just a different barrier of a milestone in terms of titles. Like we talked about with Limerick this year in the All-Ireland kind of senior ranks. And I suppose as well, just the other thing kind of shows the changing of the guard. And when you see Clare Castle there, who are from the same parish as them for so long, the kind of Lords of kind of Clare hurling, one of the biggest sides, and obviously this, unfortunately for them, suffered relegation this year now. And I guess there's a lot of talk about 6 Mile Bridge over the last couple of seasons, but for Ballyea to kind of squeeze 3 titles out of it, I think is a huge achievement. But just ask you, like, I suppose we'll talk about the Dublin final maybe in a minute in terms of what happened to kind of the Fianna on Saturday night. Did it feel like that to Inagh-Kilnamona, that they looked at the finish line and just kind of started to shake a small little bit as a young team, or is that being a bit unfair to them in terms of Ballyea's greater experience kind of winning the day?
There's a bit in that, definitely. There is a bit in that, but Ballyea had missed so much. Like, they created far more chances. It's just that, they actually started going over near the end. They were far more clinical near the end. Inagh-Kilnamona, it kind of looked like it was building up. Everything was just falling for them. Nearly every shot, I think they only hit one wide in the second half. Every shot they hit was going over the bar, no matter where they hit from. Jason McCarthy got one from distance. Josh Geiler got a couple of points. Conor Hegarty got a point. And you're just thinking this is building up for them perfectly. But Ballyea just had all the cuteness and experience towards the end. And just on a point you made there, to win 3 is unbelievable. And you have to admire a team that make hay when the sun is shining. And they're like, even without Kelly, there's a golden generation of players there. When you talk about Flanagan, Brown, Pierce Lillis, Gary Brennan, like in a couple of years, like Gary Brennan will probably be gone off the scene. So they're really maxing out, and there's definitely clubs all over the country looking at them and thinking, geez, if we could bottle what they have, if we could bottle that kind of character, that grit and heart that they have in those sticky situations. Just an interesting one at the end as well. So Aidan McCarthy had a long free, probably from nearly in the middle of the pitch around his own 45, landed short. That was probably around the 63rd minute, I'd say. And then Inagh-Kilnamona had a long free, probably just outside their own 45, but out at the sideline. It looked beyond the range of either him or Pat Kelly, the former Clare goalie. It was a goalie in 2013 All-Ireland. But there was a deliberation between the two of them for about 30 seconds as to what they were going to do. And it didn't look like there was any definitive decision made. Then Pat Kelly pulled on the ball down the line to David Fitzgerald, obviously, who we all know from his time in the Clare squad. And if he'd been fully fit, I do think he would have been able to get away and get the shot away. And he did it a couple of times earlier in the game, but he just looked fatigued as well, and he was swallowed up, and then all of a sudden the game was over. So it's hard to know. I wonder, are they deliberating now what they should have done with that last? Should they have left it in around the house and hoped to get a flick, or if it went wide, it went wide. But they kind of fell between two stools, and that's something that you'll regret, I'd imagine, over the winter. And just I was chatting to the Inagh-Kilnamona coach Tomas Kelly after. He just said it was very raw. He said we looked like we kicked for home. Things looked good at that stage, but in fairness, you have to credit to Ballyea. They were able to respond to every punch with a sucker punch or a counter punch, and they won the game fair and square. Just said it's very raw considering all the obstacles and hurdles that we had to overcome to get this far. It's easy now to say it, but we're a young team. We'd like to think that we're going to be back, but we're in a low place now, and I'd say they are very, very low.
That's the thing with it. Like there's a coming club in Clare when you talk to people down there in terms of the volume of kind of minor A, and I think they won it again this year. I think it's their third in 5 or 6 years, and under 21. But they found it difficult alone to get to a final. And just like reading the comments he had this morning, I was reading your report, like it just sounded to him like, it's little consolation to say to him now, you've all this young talent and you're kind of coming strong and all that. Like, that was the kind of opportunity. And like just the contrast that Ballyea do make the most of these opportunities one way or the other when they manage to get to these 3 finals. And also in terms of kind of adapting, I have to check the numbers, but I think they've lost a few from the team that got to the All-Ireland club final even. Like Garrod O'Connell would have been quite a good defender for them, would have played for Clare underage being back. I think he's in Australia now, or he definitely was for a while. Just looking at the team makeup, it seems to have even changed from that team that would have got to Croke Park, and that's only 4 years ago. So they definitely, they have something. Like they haven't become a flash in the pan that to be honest, I suppose from the outside of the look that I thought that might have been the case. When you look at some of the other clubs in Clare that maybe from the outside you might have thought that will kind of maybe make a better go kind of winning counties over the last couple of years. So definitely 3 in 6 seasons, fair going. And I need to see what they might do in Munster now. Particularly, actually, I think you said earlier that Bobby Hogan said Tony's coming back. Like, is he going to be back by November 28, or what do you reckon?
I don't see it. He's on the way back, but I'd say it's a long way back somehow. And if I'm honest, I think I honestly can't see them. I can't see them putting it up to Ballygunner. I just can't. I think everything was winning this county final. And I think that would have taken everything out of them. I think they'll find it hard to lift it in 2 weeks. But saying that, the grit that they have, they'll put up a good show. But without Kelly, I think they'll be bottled up, and they probably don't have enough kind of maybe natural kind of scorers. They were able to probably overcome that yesterday, but I can't see it. But listen, Ballyea have proved us wrong before. I remember they beat Thurles after extra time in an absolute epic there. I think it was in 2018 before they were beaten by Ballygunner. So you never know. And the talk was that Tony Kelly wouldn't be back until the league next year. So I'd imagine that's the case. But geez, he had a very spring in his step after the final whistle went yesterday. So I'm sure he'd love to be out there, but it's kind of mission accomplished for them now in many ways.
Well, he'll still get his medal, won't he? He did play a part in this championship, so he's not going to be one of those issues. Third senior medal for a lot of them.
Yeah, and it definitely won't be forgotten by anyone that his 2 points off the bench against Kilmaley, they wouldn't have been in this position had it not been for that. Just a quick message. Mark Tobin was on to us on Twitter. He just said, "Can I get a shout out on tomorrow's OurGame show from my own club?" That's Kilrush Askamore, who won the Wexford Junior Football Championship today after 29 years. The team featured a young Peter O'Neill, whose great-grandfather was on the team when we won the same competition back in 1918. I doubt somehow Mark Tobin is listening today, because I'd say he's could be in a watering hole still celebrating. But well done to you and your club, Mark. Fair play to you. Just a quick one. We just have a look at the Dublin final, Fintan. Like, it's hard the amount of drama over the weekend. It was perfect that this game was on TV the other night. I was going to go into it myself, but after the rugby, I was kind of a bit depleted. And I didn't know if I'd appreciate it enough, that the adrenaline would have to be flowing. I came back, I was watching it here on the box, and it was just absolutely mind-blowing stuff, really. Na Fianna's name looked to be on the title for so long. And you're just looking at Crokes and you're thinking so many things are going wrong here. They've missed so many chances. And all of a sudden, Ronan Hayes, who missed the penalty and should be looking at his feet and thinking, this isn't going to be my day, comes up trumps with that. An absolutely outrageous goal at the end of normal time.
And even before that, when it was 2-24 to 3-18, he actually missed a point chance when you were thinking, you're talking earlier about the Clare final. What do you do? I was watching it with the last 3 chances you said Inagh-Kilnamona had. I was watching it and I was thinking, what stage? Maybe Crokes have enough time to get 2 or 3 points here, But then Hayes missed one from play. I think he missed the free. He obviously missed the penalty. But not only was the finish for the goal brilliant, but he actually got the ball rode a couple of tackles, made a great kind of a burst off to his left and finished. And it was just, it was unbelievable. I mean, I thought Na Fianna definitely were done really once Donald Burke got that second goal. I didn't see the 9 points kind of gap being bridged, but I think Whiteley's goal coming so soon after it was pretty crucial, so suddenly it was down manageable pretty quickly, if it had gone on another couple of minutes. But I think the Fianna will be absolutely kicking themselves kind of with the defending for the 3 goals. I mean, they had the ball in possession before the Oisin O'Rourke one and got turned over. It seemed to be watching on TV, there was a lot of space between their full back line and a half back line, in terms of kind of just maybe shutting up shop. And look, I suppose it's easier said than done in terms of, the experience and the know-how how to kind of close out games. It was their first kind of senior final. But like I asked you earlier about Inagh-Kilnamona in terms of kind of how, you talked about the word raw and all that, for Na Fianna. I mean, I felt very sorry for Sean Curry having to do that TV interview after the game, after getting man of the match. And you could see Joe Fortune was being asked on co-commentary, and he was kind of delaying a little bit, and Kilnamona were coming back. And then before the Hayes goal, he gave it to Curry, who in fairness was absolutely magnificent. And I think he's getting called into the Dublin scene now. But it just seemed they had nothing reserved then in extra time, didn't they? It was pretty emphatic in the end, the way Kilnamona won, even though it was very, very dramatic in normal time. And I was reading this morning, it was interesting comments by Frank McGrath. He talked about that after Loughmore's game, that he was glad there wasn't gone to extra time. He just talked about sometimes in extra time, the zip can be gone out of a game with the energy and the kind of emotion. And he referenced the Dublin final, and he was glad that as a manager, he wasn't having to face into picking up his players. But it was just interesting for a game that they were so in control of. It just seemed they just couldn't get their heads right in extra time. And a lot of the, Quaylen Conway, Dylan Mulligan, was it Padraig Linehan, I think was the wing back. You've seen these guys in kind of Dublin under 20 sides have been contesting all Ireland finals and winning Leinster's last couple of years. There's a lot of talent coming through in Kilmacud. It did look like it, I suppose, for 3/4 of the game when well, in fairness, the first half was kind of evenly matched, but particularly the third quarter, it looked like Na Fianna were completely pulling clear. But in extra time, there's really only one side in it,
It's kind of the perfect scenario for Crokes to win. Everything was going wrong. It was, yet another one of these games where they probably weren't going to show up on the big day, beaten Coola twice, weren't going to show up when it mattered most, and were going to lose another county final. And now all of a sudden, I would worry for other teams in Dublin over the next couple of years of, almost like the release valve effect that this will have on them. No emotional baggage now for going into next year's championship, going into Leinster, none whatsoever. Just you mentioned Oisin O'Rourke there as well. I think at times he has to be carried out in a stretcher to win a free. At times, it's just he's definitely. If I say Shane O'Donnell nearly always attract frees, Oisin O'Rourke referees they do not want to blow the whistle when he is clearly fouled. Just a word also on Crokes' joint manager Kieran Dowling, because there's a massive Offaly connection there. He's son of former president John Dowling, and obviously Crokes won on Saturday night. He's a native of Tullamore. The Offaly football title is named after his dad, John Dowling, and Tullamore win that yesterday after a replay. And it's funny you were saying about extra time being played in finals. If Rhodes snatched a draw from from a nearly impossible position the first day in the Offaly final, and if they'd gone into extra time, I just couldn't have seen them winning it. And that was basically what happened to Na Fianna the other day. You're emotionally spent. If you get a replay, you get a time to maybe have a behind closed doors meeting, chat, get it all out there, go again. But there was no time to adapt to it at all, and they just looked shell shocked. I think they scored 1 point in extra time, and they scored 1 point maybe in the last 5 or 6 minutes as well.
They only scored 2 points after Donald Burke's goal. So that was in about maybe 30 minutes of action, maybe I kind of got the math wrong out there. But yeah, it was just I completely agree. I mean, we probably should know the answer to this, but I know it's the pressure of Dublin club fixtures and with one of the players playing in the football that they had to get a winner on the day, because I know most of the county finals, I understand there's extra pressures this year on the calendar and there has been extra time and there's been penalty shootouts and stuff, but generally, my understanding in a lot of cases, county finals are decided by a replay, that it is felt that it's kind of a GA tradition, isn't it? It's not a way to decide a championship in terms of a final. But yeah, they just looked shell shocked. They weren't able to recover, and they played so well. We should kind of give them credit for how they played for kind of 3/4 of the game. The use of the ball, and there was a stage in the third quarter. I think it was one of the points that Colin Curry got off over his shoulder. It just felt like everything was going over for them. Everything was working. Rush came forward. He was winning loads of ball. He got a point. Obviously, Sean Curry was scoring points all day. You Donald Burke as well, like Micheál Murphy, AJ Murphy, but Kilmacud just dug it out. And like I said, I just think the timing of the second goal was key. It just negated it pretty quickly, and it's like, okay, 6 points in it. And yeah, I have to give complete credit to Hayes in terms of kind of his bottle and kind of leadership. After badly miscuing that penalty, and then in extra time he just took over. And in fairness, the ball into him was superb, wasn't it? In some of the kind of diagonal deliveries, and when it was kind of 1-on-1 inside, once he got it, he kind of invariably knew where it was going to end up. But definitely, that's interesting the point you're making about kind of the consequences that is now, because I mean, if they had lost that, then it's like it would have been 3 different teams that lost county finals, wouldn't it? Since they won it in 2014 against Jude's. Whereas, the flip side of that then is like maybe similar to kind of Inagh-Kilnamona. You're thinking if Na Fianna win one, they're going to kick on and win a couple because of the age profile and because of the amount of kind of underage success they've had and all that. So I guess it'll play out over the next couple of seasons and we'll kind of see how it is. Just on the management thing, though, I thought it was interesting as well. Niall Corcoran, just judging by the TV thing, seemed to be quite involved, didn't he, in terms of kind of running down on a couple of times. I'm not sure what kind of official capacity he is. I mean, obviously he was involved with the club for so long, but it was just interesting, the camera kind of picking that out on a couple of occasions in the third quarter and the second half as they were trying to get back into the game.
Great to have lads like that of his expertise to be able to call on. I don't know if they were calling on I don't know if they were calling on it the whole time throughout the year, but as we kind of mentioned before in previous shows, the split season does allow this to happen an awful lot more. I was chatting with you about it last week. It does allow it to happen an awful lot more. Just a quick one, Fintan. Ronan Hayes was obviously missing for the Leinster final this year. Like, how different could Dublin's fortunes have been if he was available for the Leinster final this year?
Well, on the basis of how he was against Galway before that, and his club form and how he's generally just kind of grown kind of as a player over the last year, you'd have to think he would have made kind of a sizable input. Whether he would have made enough of an impact to kind of reverse the, what was it, 7 or 8 points it was kind of between the sides in the game is kind of hard to know. But definitely in terms of he just looks to have kind of grown as a player, and the way he kind of fills up role as a kind of a focal point for the Dublin attack and the Kilmacud attack, and obviously just his big game temperament. And we're kind of repeating ourselves here, but I suppose the way, like, he'd be very good in the first half, on Saturday night, I thought, and then the second half just wasn't going well for him, and like his head was in his hands with some of the point shots. I thought it was interesting to the body language, like not only just the penalty, but I just remember that point attempt, looking at him, it just seemed like nothing was kind of going right for him, but to kind of still pop up there. And in fairness, obviously there was a brilliant run. I think it was Paul Glennahan came forward for that for the fourth goal, and then obviously he just took ownership of extra time, and finished with 114. So definitely going forward, if you're Dublin management looking at that, you're thinking you're going to build on Hayes for next year, and definitely you'd be thinking, Sean Curry, in terms of trying to develop someone. I thought Micheál Murphy as well. I was impressed with him for Dublin under 20s this year, and they got the delayed final, the 2020 final, if you know what I mean, under 20, when that was played in July. He looks quite a decent prospect, so there's definitely big talent coming in Na Fianna as well, but it's just the scars of that defeat now, in how to kind of deal with it, like. And definitely, like you said, I suppose the comparison is Tullamore in the Offaly football. If they'd had 2 weeks to go away and think about it, maybe it would have been a bit better, rather than trying to, because the cameras were going in on the water break there, and I think Rush was at one stage talking to Niall O'Callaghan. But like, you just wondered how they were. I don't know, like, it's a very tough situation for management players. How do you kind of get your heads right in that sort of an instance when you have to go again?
If you have a couple of weeks to deal with it, it's so much easier to comprehend it. It's like Clare against Tipp this year when Aidan McCarthy was sin binned. It's just sometimes things like that can just be very hard to deal with in that moment in time. If you have a bit of time to actually if you have a bit of time to digest it, you can deal with it. But in that moment in time, it's very, very difficult to deal with. Just a reminder that today's show is sponsored by OurGame Retro. Use the promo code OurGame to get 15% off an unbelievable collection of retro jerseys, including this Derry one that I have on here, and the Tipperary Galway jerseys. Lovely jerseys there. No matter who you support, you can pick those up. They're an ideal stocking filler. Remember to subscribe to OurGame on YouTube. So just in the bottom right hand corner there underneath Fintan, just click the subscribe button and turn on your push notifications, and you will be notified every time the show is going live. Also, Patreon is an absolutely brilliant service. It's only €5 per month, so you can listen to the show on the go. You don't have to be watching on YouTube. You can listen on the go. Very, very handy, and it's only €5 per month to support the channel. We'll just move on. Obviously, an interesting situation in Galway, where the semi-final between Gort and the reigning champions Thomas's was called off again just before the weekend. Gort players came out with a statement saying that they had a COVID case within the camp and that there were 3 more players awaiting test results. I think it's pretty fair to say that everybody was happy to see the statement that came out from the Galway County Board last night. So it just read, Galway GA CCC can confirm that the Brooks Group Senior Hurling Championship semi-final fixture will go ahead next weekend following a proposal received from St. Thomas's earlier today. Gort GA Club have agreed to this proposal. Galway GA CCC are happy to facilitate the proposal, and we thank St. Thomas's for their generous gesture, which allows the senior championship to proceed without further delay. The date, time and venue will be confirmed later, and tickets will be available online. Just David Connors from the Tuam Herald just commented on that and just said, glad to see this wrapped up swiftly. Again, St. Thomas's stepping up to the plate is massive here. Saves weeks and possibly months of appeals. Good for Clarenbridge too, who shouldn't have to wait. I think this is definitely sped up the situation an awful lot. And Fintan, if you're there, just a fairly magnanimous gesture on behalf of St. Thomas's as well, that they just want to get this game played, and they want to get this game played against a fully fit Gort outfit. Doesn't look like Fintan might have just dropped off there for a minute. So I'll just go through a few comments that have come through throughout the show. Joe Butler just said it would be far better not to select announced man player of the match until the game concludes. I totally agree. You just don't know what's going to happen. Like, it's like leaving, it's like giving a man the match award with 5 minutes to go in a game. You just don't know who's going to produce a bit of brilliance and step up to the plate at the end of a game. Conor Heaney just said Curry was man of the match, whether they won the match or not, scored 8 points in fairness. But at the end of full time, you'd have to say that Ronan Hayes had totally changed the game. And to me, Curry was the best man on the field for probably about 40 minutes. I know it was only 20 minutes, but the 20 minutes in extra time, you'd have to say Hayes is absolutely outstanding. ML89, I have to say Kilmacud looks the most likely to put up a challenge to Ballyea and Leinster. Yeah, just as I was saying to Fintan there, it's going to be very, very interesting to see what effect this has on them mentally in particular. Will there be, a bit of a swagger to them now in a good type of a way? Will they be able to attack the Leinster Championship? That's going to be really, really interesting here. Jim P just said, fair play to St. Thomas's. Yeah, I actually have to say, I think it was a really, really sporting gesture. And especially having seen how it worked out for Kerry earlier on this year when they made an unbelievably sporting gesture to Tyrone and then ended up getting knocked out of the Senior Football Championship as a result. So we'd see how that plays out. Joe Butler just said, a tight, tetchy affair in Mayo hurling final. Very much start with too many frees. Toreen beat Ballyhonus by a point. Cottle, Freeman, the difference. Excellent. I'll just go through that match briefly here now. So it ended up Toreen 15 points, Ballyhonus 11. So I believe it was far from a classic, but a very, very physical affair. I think it was 1-5 to 8 points at the break. Keith Higgins had 8 points for Ballyhonus, but I think there was a goal near the end, a goal with 8 minutes to go. Kind of paved the way. No, it didn't pave the way, because Ballyhonus were the ones that got the goal. But Shane Boland, I believe, was very, very good for Tureen. And as Joe said there, Cottle Freeman, from anybody that was at the game, he seems to have had a man of the match display. There was controversy at the end of this as well. It seems to have been controversy at the end of most games this weekend. So at the final whistle, with Ballyhonus protesting to the referee that not all of the 6 minutes of injury time indicated were played, but it mattered little at the end because Toreen were crowned champions. Just Fintan, a quick one. You were kind of documenting plenty of drama in the Cork Senior Football Championship yesterday. Can you just talk me through that Castlehaven game? Sounded like an absolute roller coaster.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. So it's the second year in a row that these teams have met in a senior football semi-final, and the interesting thing was last year, the thing I remember about it was that it went to extra time, went to penalty shootout, the Castlehaven won, but it actually was the night word started filtering through during the game that the country was going into level 5 lockdown, and it was a Sunday night, and the following morning, it was announced the club matches weren't going to be played in Castlehaven. We were waiting, I think it was 10 months to play the final, so it was kind of the last game of football we kind of saw for a long time at club level. So they played again yesterday, second semi-final in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. From the start, one of the big things people looked at before the game would have been kind of the shootout element. You had Brian Hurley on one side, who people are familiar with, Stephen Sherlock, who's probably been the best club forward in Cork this season, with Hurley probably being the other big contender. And in the first half alone, Hurley had 4 points and Sherlock scored 2-4. Then Hurley scores 2 goals for Castlehaven in the third quarter. Bars get another goal. They're up 3-11 to 3-9 in injury time. Hurley gets a free. Then the whole thing basically is about Castleiney trying to get the ball into his hands to get him on going for a shooter. He gets a shot away. It goes wide, but there's big controversy. He's appealing for 45, or the rest of the Castleiney players didn't look at the time, didn't look at maybe from the footage either that it was a definite touch, but they were claiming it, and they seemed very, very adamant about it. And the 40 was given, and he slotted in the 65th minute, so it went extra
Just
time.
a quick one on that, Finto. It's gas you say that. There seemed to have been an unbelievable amount of decisions like that yesterday. David Fitzgerald hit a shot in the 5th minute for Inagh-Kilnamona, which wasn't waved wide, or a point wasn't given. Play continued, and 90 seconds later, the referee came back to the umpire and gave the point. So it seems like that seemed to be a common theme yesterday.
Yeah, because there was about 10-15 seconds where the ref was going to keep going and the umpire wasn't going to go in. But in fairness, the St. Finbarr's manager made the point after it. He goes, look, I didn't think it was a point, but they were right there in front of it. He goes, I don't think their lads above it. Like, they were so adamant about it that you maybe felt there had been some kind of a touch. But anyway, they got the lifeline anyway. Hurley slotted the 45 under immense pressure. Looked like they'd availed of that because they went ahead in extra time. He got a really good point. They went ahead 3-16 to 3-13. There's guys cramping all over the place now. The fella's been taken on, taken off. And the whole game plan, the whole game seems to be about, can the Bars get the ball to Stephen Sherlock, who's been marked by Damien Callahan. He's been double marked at times. In fairness, Callahan was cramping up at this stage as well. But he was the main guy Haven had to watch. But somehow Sherlock, he managed to get free twice in a row and puts the ball over the bar from play. And at a stage when you thought they were going to need a goal to basically clinch the game. And then in the 82nd minute was on the clock. He was ankle tripped when he got the ball. And he had a
good old ankle trip.
Yeah, he just kind of did a little jink, got away from the defender who it was obviously a tired tackle. He kind of dived at him and it just came as an ankle trip. And under unbelievable pressure, he managed to keep his head and he put the ball over the bar. So for the second year in a row, these two teams were going to penalties. And on this occasion, St. Finbarr's won it 5-4. And the interesting thing, I suppose, a name that's very familiar to Cork GA people, John Kearns, who was obviously a great goalkeeper for Cork in the 80s. His son would have been the third choice keeper in 2018 for the seniors, but different guys got injured and he was in goal when they won their first county for 33 years. He's back in goal now. What the Bars manager said afterwards, after last year's, I suppose, losing the penalty shootout, they decided to practice them this year. And he said they asked the players who were the first 5 that wanted to take them, and Kearns was one of them as goalkeeper. So he saved the penalty, the only penalty that was saved, and then he scored the last penalty to clinch it. And one of the interesting things was, I hadn't noticed this, but the Examiner were live streaming the game, and Patrick Kelly was doing co-commentary. And he said afterwards, I presume that the Bars, like you see this in soccer the whole time, they're studying penalty techniques and whatever. So the guy who missed for Castleiney, he must have scored. I think he must have taken one in last year's shootout because all the Bars management were gesturing towards Kearns, go right. They were waving, we're right. That's where he died, and that's where he saved the penalty. So like I was thinking about this, they're like for major soccer international tournaments. Yeah, there's obviously study done, and whoever Harry Kane, kicks 90% of penalties, he goes right or whatever. And GA teams now are they having to start to do that level of analysis and that level of study? But Kearns was the hero, and it was just mad drama. A tough way to end the game in terms of penalty shootout, but you're under pressure now when it's a semi-final in terms of getting the fixture played, and you have to get a team from Munster club and all that. So like the final will go to a replay, but yeah, quite amazing. Both from Kearns' point of view and obviously Sherlock as well. So finished basically 3-16 apiece, or another way to describe it was Stephen Sherlock 2-10, Brian Hurley 2-9, and all through the game it was like who's going to finish top scorer, So amazing drama, to be honest.
You would have done well to distill that down to 200 words if you were filing for some newspaper, I tell you today.
Yeah.
Jenny Mac, you wouldn't know where to start. It's funny how massive talking points earlier in the game, like stuff that you could go into forensic detail about, become so insignificant almost towards the end of the game.
Yeah, it was complete. Like it just felt like Sherlock scored 2 goals in the first half, really well taken goals, but they seemed almost irrelevant. It was all about his points in extra time and the fact that he nailed the free. And then obviously John Kearns hadn't, he was grand. There was no major talking points in terms of performance in goal, but then he ends up being, it was a really, really good save. And then he obviously managed to score the winning penalty as well. But yeah, they've produced unbelievable drama. 2 teams, 2 years in a row getting the penalty shootouts.
Savage. Just a couple of other little football talking points. I know your colleague Kevin O'Brien at the 42 was wing back when when Tullamore won the senior football championship yesterday. A fair effort. I know how hard it is to try and mix a day job as a journalist with playing. So big kudos to him. A couple of kind of interesting things that come out of that for Tullamore now. So they've got serious dual issues. They're down to play the Senior B final against Clodagh Gales next Saturday in Burr, and the footballers are down to play Naas the following day in the Leinster Football Championship. So the Tullamore manager, Niall Stack, just said, we now have to contest the hurling final next Saturday and we're supposed to be playing on Sunday. I think the county board and the Leinster Council have to look at that. I don't think there's a rush on the hurling, if I'm being honest. The first round of the Leinster Championship isn't until December. Do the county board want us to represent Offaly as best we can? If they do, they will have to look at the fixture. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And just a quick one.
I think it's 3 or 4 dual players they have, maybe a bit more. Shane Dooley obviously being the one probably best known in terms of his kind of hurling exploits. But yeah, that is a tough one. Just one of Kevin, which I do think is a really kind of nice little family one, is that his father Benny would have managed St. Bridget's to win the Roscommon County title last year. That's his native parish, and he was involved in the All-Ireland club. So I was thinking, is that a pretty unique one? A father and son, 2 years in a row winning county senior titles, but not only in different counties but in different provinces. I don't know. Is there too many contenders for that stat? But
yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Our viewers are usually fairly good at letting us know, so it'll be interesting to see that.
Exactly,
on Tullamore as well. Pat Nolan, the GA writer with the Mirror, just said since July, Tullamore GA have won 2020 Junior B Football Championship, 2020 Munster Minor Football Championship, 2020 Under 20 Championship, 2021 Junior A Championship, 2021 Under 20 Championship, 2021 Senior Football Championship. Tullamore Ladies have won the 2021 Senior Football Championship, and the Tullamore Camogie team have won Intermediate and Junior B Championships this year. Interesting, John Furlong was man of the match yesterday. Just an unbelievable player. The positions that he finds himself in for a guy of his age and how smart he is on the pitch. If I were to put my head on the block, I'd probably say that he will be probably the player from that under 20 team that will burst through onto the Offaly senior team, probably the fastest. He's won 220 medals in probably the last 8 to 10 weeks, I'd say, as well as winning the Leinster under 20 championship with Offaly and the All Ireland, and now he's got a senior championship medal, man of the match accolade yesterday as well. So he's definitely one to look forward to. Just on the hurling action as well, we mentioned Naas earlier. Naas obviously did the double over the weekend as well. They were Kildare Senior Hurling Championship champions on a scoreline of 116 to Selbridge's 113, but they were forced to dig very, very deep. I think they were 1-8 to 8 down at the break. Jack Sheridan finished with 12, 5 from play. Just a seriously classy forward. I think it was Simon Lacey's goal with 9 minutes to go that was the difference. Heartbreaking enough for Selbridge, who had Jerry Keegan back playing. I think he came back into the country just around the time COVID hit. I think it started 2020, but he would have played for Leinster in the Railway Cup, and I think he did the cruciate nearly one of the first nights back. So be interesting to see if he can be a big player for London over the coming years. I'm sure David Herrick will be doing his best to have him on board. Just in the London final as well, Robert Emmett's 221, St Gabriel's 118 after extra time, and that was a replay. The amount of extra times and replays in county finals is staggering, really. An interesting one there. Carter Healy was playing for Robert Emmett's, and I think he actually played a Laois intermediate final for Portlaoise earlier this year. But because he had transferred over, but because that 2020 championship was still going on, he managed. I don't think that's happened too often where a guy has played. You mentioned about different provinces where a guy has played county finals in different countries in the same year, and that's legally now. I'm sure there's plenty of guys that have done it illegally down through the years, but legally is a different story.
That we can actually report on this one,
Yeah, he sent me a picture. I did a thing with Racing TV a few weeks back when Frankie Dettori came to Bellewstown, and it was shown on Racing TV yesterday. There's a picture of me in the famous phone box in Bellewstown, and he had the TV in the background with me looking like an ape on it, and the cup just standing in front of it. But I think he definitely would still be a fair tinge of disappointed because his native Portlaoise were beaten well in the Laois Football Championship over the weekend. Just a message in from Sean O'Sullivan there. Told my father yesterday the Waterford under 20 was between BMG and Mount Sion. Asked me who won. I told him the score was 223 to 10. He no longer needed to ask who won. I presume he means Ballygunner. Yeah, Ballygunner seems to be cleaning up at underage levels.
Yeah, I presume it's kind of talking about their kind of hoovering up there. Just to go back, one other thing with the London one, which I thought was interesting, the captain of Robert Emmett's, Killian Burke, who had been on the Cork hurling squad a couple of years ago, he's from Middleton. So he would have won county senior medal in 2013 with Middleton, played with London in the 2018 Christie Ring. I'm not sure how it actually happened, but he was back in Cork for a year and played a county championship for Middleton, but now was back over in London. And then obviously Middleton are in the Cork final next Sunday. But he captained them from kind of wing back. And it was like, fair as the team, like if you look, I think him and Cara Healy, I think were actually on the same flank of the defence. And I was just thinking in terms of, you don't know what sort of players you'd have from year to year in London, but in two guys who played county hurling to have on one wing of your defence, that's a fair old kind of backbone.
Yeah, Paul Killeen, I think, was centre back for Gabriels as well, who obviously won All Ireland with Galway in 2017. My own clubmate Neil Rogers was player manager for Gabriels, and by all accounts, Gabriels were on top in normal time. But again, once it goes to extra time, the team that has levelled, particularly if they've come from a bit back, just can kind of have all the momentum. You can just be totally emotionally and physically spent going into extra time. Just the last couple of games from the weekend, the Kilkenny intermediate final finished Glenmore 3-19, St. Loughton's 2-9. Definitely didn't look like that would be the case at half time. Freshford Loughton's were the much better side in the first half, and I think they were 4 or 5 up at half time. Brian Kennedy, who was on the Kilkenny panel in recent years, he actually flew home from Abu Dhabi to play in the final. Don't believe he had played throughout the year, but he came home and he's actually staying home for good. But he played in the final. Probably thought he was going to get a county medal at half time the way things are going, but Glenmore totally turned around the second half. Ger Aylward was outstanding. He ended up man of the match. He got, I think it was 1-3. His brother Mark got 1-2. Owen Murphy was very good again at centre back. His younger brother Shane is definitely one to watch. He was very good again. Ian Byrne, I believe, came into it strong up in attack in the second half too. And James Maher was kind of firefighting for St. Loughton's from all reports that I have read. He hit a couple of points and fought to the end, but they were totally blown away from by all accounts in the second half. So Glenmore will definitely, we hope, to go on the run in Leinster now, and by all accounts they'll be a very competitive senior team in Kilkenny over the next couple of years. Fintan, just one quick one to finish up. Joey Holden's retirement might have flown under the radar a small bit. An All-Ireland winning captain, an All-Star fullback, I think in 2015 when he filled in for JJ Delaney and got an All-Star in his first season and captain Kilkenny to win the All-Ireland. He's obviously the last Kilkenny man to get his hands on Liam McCarthy. And by all accounts, one of the best club players in Kilkenny over the last while. Probably underrated and understated, but an unbelievably effective player.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there with the underrated, and even the fact that it was on the week where Colin Fennelly probably didn't plan to announce it, but it just happened that he was probably asked after the county final that his decision was permanent, probably in the same way that Stephen O'Keefe's kind of announcement came a couple of months back, you remember, after the Waterford final. So Fennelly's obviously going to take much of the plaudits, and I think we look at Ballyhale a lot, and I would have written about this, just the volume of attackers they produce. Obviously Henry and TJ get all the plaudits, but now, you see Mullen is coming again now, and Owen Cody in terms of kind of young players. Maybe we kind of forget about the kind of defenders who kind of backbone that obviously Michael Fennelly would have got a lot of kind of plaudits, but Holden wouldn't have been a kind of very celebrated underage player coming through, but I just think the job he did for Kilkenny was very, very kind of effective in the same way that he kind of has for Ballyhale. And reading his quotes and reading his kind of statement, maybe it's kind of a realization that kind of what else is there left for him to achieve in a club game or in that. And I just think what a boost for Ballyhale. 2 guys coming back that aren't absolutely crocked and fatigued from playing till their late 30s or whatever at county level, himself and Fennelly back, and it probably kind of adds another maybe layer of reason why they're probably going to be the favourites for the All-Ireland club now at the moment when you're looking at it.
They'll be even harder to beat over the next couple of years if they have lads like that coming back in fresh. But the last thing Kilkenny will want now is for a certain TJ Reid to be stepping aside and wanting to be coming back fresh for his club, because that would be an absolute disaster, I'd say. Just a quick one, Fintan, the GOAT of the week. I let you think on the spot there because I didn't tee you up for it. My GOAT of the week anyway would definitely be Jack Brown from Ballyea. Thought he was absolutely outstanding, particularly when he was needed most yesterday. He just kept he was just bombing out of defence with balls. And as I said, when they needed players to step up in Kelly's absence, I think he was probably the one who stepped up most. Again, I think he's kind of like Joey Holden in many ways. It's unless you're Tommy Walsh or JJ Delaney or Brian Whelan, defenders are not celebrated, or Sean Finn half as much. But he was brilliant again yesterday, and I'm sure he'll be looking to try and nail down a spot in the Clare team again next year. But was there anyone in particular you saw over the weekend that stood out?
I'll probably go for John McGrath with that one, just on the basis that he's obviously been winning Man of the Match awards repeatedly over the last couple of weeks in terms of hurling and football, but to kind of maintain that standards, and particularly the way the game went, when they had such a bad start and they needed him to kind of step up, he came out to the half forward and just got involved in the game, and like I said, nailed his frees, chipped in with points on play. Just been an absolute scoring machine over the last 6 weeks, and I'd say Loughmore just hoping that he might just keep it going for another 2 weekends now, until the end of November, and they can have a couple of county titles. So yeah, I'll go for John McGrath.
His ability to keep winning Man of the Match awards is absolutely outstanding, in fairness to him. That's all on today's show, folks. Again, if you want to get one of these replica Derry jerseys or any of the lovely jerseys there on screen, go to orgaretro.com, type in the promo code OurGame to get 15% off. So a nice little discount heading up to Christmas. You can also subscribe to OurGame on YouTube. So just down the bottom right hand corner there, push the button and turn on your push notifications. You get notified every time we're going live for a show. And lastly, to support the channel, you can sign up to Patreon, which is just €5 a month. It means you can listen to the channel, listen to the shows while you're out walking or running or in the gym or exercising, or no matter what you're doing. Fintan, again, thanks a million. Fintan O'Toole from the 42, thanks a million for joining us. Again, a reminder there, the Myler, A Family Memoir, which is part of the Fresh and Bud series from Hero Books. Great stories, great yarns with the former Irish Soccer International David Myler and the former Cork and Wexford and Carlow and many other managers. John
keep listening there,
yeah. Kilmiley, he's still going strong. He'll be going in probably the Munster Intermediate Championship, but a reminder to pick up that. It's an absolutely brilliant read. And we'll see you all on Thursday again for the preview show. Thanks a million, Fintan.
Cheers, Bernie.